Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Schools across the country are increasingly limiting students' access to smartphones or banning them altogether. Studies are showing negative impacts that phones have on mental health and classroom performance. Is there another reason we should limit kids' access to smartphones, though? Their effect on our political culture. Are they giving birth to a new kind of tribalism? We're joined by Thomas Howes to speak about this. Thomas E. Howes is editor-in-chief of the Vital Center, founder of the Reagan Caucus and Reagan Caucus Action. He is also a lecturer in politics at Princeton University. Tom, thank you very much for making the time. How are you doing?
Oh, doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, very glad to be able to speak with you. And your piece in the public discourse echoes a lot of my own thoughts of this issue. So I want to begin by asking you to talk about this concept of political tribalism, especially in recent decades.
Oh, yeah. So, it's. I remember at some point when I was in grad school studying philosophy, one of the professors brought up this Canadian intellectual, Marshall McLuhan. And after he brought him up, I looked him up, looked at a few of his books, his articles. And one thing I thought from reading this Marshall McLuhan, he's the one who's famous for saying this idea of like the medium is the message, right? And he deals with media and its effect on us. And the more popular book that came out of this idea was by Neil Postman. He wrote this book called Amusing Ourselves to Death that was supposed to be based on the ideas of McLuhan. And, one thing, in my own personal opinion, when I was reading McLuhan was he was kind of a sloppy thinker, and I think he said a lot of things that probably aren't true. But when he did say on something but every once in a while he would have a very deep insight into something that nobody else was talking about. And I think there was something to this idea of the kind of messages that basically will succeed depend on the medium, right? Mm-hmm. And the medium affects the way we think about things. So his idea was that the modern world, things like constitutional democracy, representative government, whatever, it's not coincidental that it came after Gutenberg's press and the proliferation of literacy, right? Where we all became a much more literate culture, and something about reading books, something about the medium itself, kind of encourages a certain type of universal perspective, mm-hmm. where we're forced to engage with the thoughts of others who come from different perspectives than our own, and that creates a more, almost a little bit, in a good sense, individualism, and as opposed to a sort of collectivism. So that was one of the things he said, but he was warning about how with the widespread, he wasn't warning because he was fine with it. He said with TV it's something different, where he saw the direction of things like television leading us back to a kind of tribalism, but a kind of like one large tribalism. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing in the last few years with the internet and with these smartphones is something different than TV, where the people who, because all these social trends change right around it. We don't fully understand it, but there's a bunch of data that shows all these social trends changing around the time smartphones become a big thing. Jonathan Haidt writes about this. He deals with depression among the youth and all these issues that are coming about because of smartphones. But I think after I wrote this piece right after Charlie Kirk was shot, and I was thinking about this confused, almost diabolical shooter of Charlie Kirk, and how he was radicalized online on these message boards and separated, and seeing some of the trends of recently with Gen Z and TikTok and the people getting these young people getting into these very radical viewpoints. I just had to wonder, how much are the smartphones playing into this? Because you see, we're also seeing from Gen Z that they're less social than previous generations, and they aren't hanging out as much in person as other generations. And all the dating is happening online, and it is set up online. They aren't meeting their potential spouses in person anymore, right? That you see this problem of enclaves forming online, where your whole community is only people who are extremely like-minded to you, because all the, you found your own community of people who all think the same exact way that you do, and less contact with the more sort of pluralistic, real everyday communities that we have of the people around us, in physical proximity. And you have to wonder if that is playing a role in this growing tribalism we're seeing in the political culture. And that was my concern I expressed in the essay.
One of the things that you highlighted very early on is that you actually notice this if you pay attention to generational demographics between Generation X, Millennials, Gen Z, and the upcoming Gen Alpha. Can you briefly comment on that?
Oh, well, I mean, my own personal experience is that when I bring this issue up to people, I'm a millennial, so I'm 40 years old, so I'm an elder millennial, I guess you call them. When I talk to people who are my age, they all seem to see this problem. And when I talk to other parents our age, they're all very concerned about too much screens for the kids. But when I talk to my much older siblings, because I come from a big family who are from Generation X, and I talk to other people from Generation X, I get looked when I bring up this issue as if I'm some sort of Luddite or something, that I'm opposed to the newest technologies, right? And I've noticed that with their own parenting, they were very much just handing the screens very frequently without any concern for moderation to their kids. And I don't want to insult anyone who's in Gen X, but that was just sort of an observation of my own personal life. It might not be backed up, but it was sort of an observation I brought up to almost like a hypothesis, is there a generational divide here on this?
And even I believe there is. I believe that your observations are spot on. So even if we don't think about the generational attitudes toward the consumption of technology, what we can agree on across the board is that we've never seen present levels of political tribalism coupled with present levels of a lack of intellectual engagement of political issues. Can you comment on that, please?
No, I think that's right. I mean, the medium that's prevalent right now, things like short video, social media things like Reels or TikTok aren't like the whole medium is the message thing, whether you take that literally or not. The idea is the medium kind of dictates what's going to be a successful message, and the messages that you're going to get in politics are not going to be very deep. They're going to be very superficial, and it will not ever replace the kind of intellectual inquiry you'd have with sort of book research or reading long articles. Although I guess there is this podcast thing. The podcast, I guess, has potential for some deeper level of education than like a TikTok or Reels. But I think what we're seeing with the younger generation is a lot of the politics they're getting is from this sort of low attention span geared social media.
This segment practically flew by. I'm very grateful for your time, Tom, and I'm looking forward to future conversations.
Oh, thank you very much.
My guest has been Dr. Thomas Howes, Editor-in-Chief of the Vital Center, founder of the Reagan Caucus and Reagan Caucus Action, and a lecturer in politics at Princeton University. We've been talking about how smartphones have been one of the catalyzing reasons for political tribalism in the West. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.